Cool. So thank you very much for joining. I know it's late at night, so you guys are a passionate, bunch of people who really passionate about the transition topic into product management. So thank you very much for spending the time, and I hope this is the time that works for most of you. I'm one of the counselors on High Counselor, so if you guys are, find me there, then feel free to shoot me a note. One second. So, okay. So my big focus today is going to be, and talk is going to be transition to product management. I don't have a whole bunch of slides, so we'll open it up for Q&A pretty quickly. Very quickly about me, I have about 12 odd years in product management. I've been at Adobe on the Photoshop team, at Yahoo on the front page personalization team. I've been at couple of different startups in product management roles, and currently I'm co-founder and head of product at a machine learning startup called Growth.ai. We're in the very early stages, team of 4, trying to build a new and exciting, innovative product. And I've also been an instructor at product school for the last 8 odd months, which is an outfit here in the Bay Area and also in LA and many other places where I have taught an 8-week course on weekends on product management. So the agenda, like I said, is pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk about a transition framework for about, it shouldn't take 45 minutes. This is like it should take much less than that, and then we can open it up. So most people are probably here are fascinated about product management because you've probably heard the phrase, a product manager is the CEO or the mini CEO of the product, which is in many terms true, except that being a CEO also carries with it a lot of responsibility. And if you're not prepared to do the CEO job, it will not work out as nicely as you probably have a fantastical view about it. So before we begin into what are some of the challenges and how do you transition into a PM role, let me talk about the types of PM roles as I see it. So the number one sort of PM role that you have in a company is what I call enterprise PM. And here you are mostly talking about are responsible for integration, implementation of big, large projects. Companies like Oracle and Cisco and Intuit are examples of this. There is also a lot of support structure in place for in such big organizations. So if you're a new product manager, or if you're technical, then this and you want to transition, this is a nice place for you to go into. When I mean support structure, it means there are program managers, engineering managers, architects. So product manager by himself or herself doesn't have to do everything. The second type of role is a consumer PM, where you are responsible for understanding, validating, and running what do the customers want. What are some of the needs of those customers, prioritizing them against sort of other things that are going on within the company together with the exec team, and then run all aspects of the team. So you're running, you are the mini CEO, the CEO, you run engineering, you run deadlines, you run everything. Examples of companies who are very consumer focused are Facebook, Dropbox, Google, Snapchat, where you're, very embedded with the customer. And this is what most people mean when they think about consumer becoming a product manager, is to work on a well-crafted end user product. The third type of category is a product strategy / go-to-market. So here you're responsible for taking the product to market, the competitive landscape. This is heavy on customer interaction again. You are responsible for the team, the organization, what process, is it agile, is it waterfall, is it a mix, what tools we use. You're also responsible for hiring, and that's a very key responsibility. And mostly this is something when you've done a bunch of years of enterprise PM or consumer PM, you would transition into sort of go into a role like a CPO or a VP of product or director of product, depending on the size of the company. The easiest, like I mentioned earlier, is to get into an enterprise PM role if you're technical. The second one is if you are, is sort of transition from an enterprise into a consumer role, which is more exciting, but it also comes with more responsibility. You're running all aspects of the team. And the third one, which you graduate into, is a product strategy slash a go-to-market role. So that's the framework. If you don't have a technical background, then there are two ways to come into it. One is a technical background, and the other way to come into this is to have a very strong knowledge of the consumers. So if you are in customer support, if you are in technical sales, if you're a solution architect, or you're doing any where you're very deeply embedded with consumers of that product, then it becomes then you can transition into a consumer PM kind of role. Cool. So before we, like I said, you could be the exciting part of being a product manager is that you are the CEO of the product. One second, let me just move. You're the CEO of the product, but there are challenges that come with it. So the number one challenge, oops, this is, one second, I can't seem to get my cursor because this is, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
You can see the bottom part of it?
I can see attacks from engineering section.
Yeah, yes. Cool. So yeah, the number one thing you would have as a if you transition into a role is attacks from engineering. By this I mean, like, if you're in an engineering role, you will repeatedly get the question from engineering that they are not clear about what it is that we are building. My favorite, and this happens for a number of reasons, but mostly, a couple of times when, say a director of engineering or some senior leader is, not, too involved in the project, they might come in and, in a product reviews meeting and say, well, I don't really understand what's going on or why we are building this. So that is very direct, but there are also subtle things that will happen where engineering folks and people who are building the actual product will indicate to you that this is something that is the requirements are not clear. Those not really attacks, like it's not like somebody's taking a spear and poking it into you, but there'll be subtle asks for clarifications, and and that is a thing. Like with a CEO, you are installed as a CEO, so everybody is reporting to you. So it's very different. As a product manager, nobody reports to you, and so before you become the CEO of the product, you have to, nobody gives you a pedestal to stand on and say, okay, now I'm going to listen to you. There are already people within the organization that people have been going to sort of get their direction, and you coming in. You have to first establish yourself as the leader, as the person who has all the, the subject matter expertise. And this is what I mean by, these subtle attacks from engineering. What this leads to is, frowns from leadership. When multiple engineering folks might tell you that things are not clear, the leadership will start to believe that, it's not clear. What you're doing is sort of not clear. You might be told to improve your email or improve the way you communicate, how you influence people, in group settings, how you talk and communicate. All of that comes into question very, very quickly. The other thing that can happen is misalignment. So you might be given a product that you're working on, but that may be misaligned from what the management or the company is trying to do. And this happens sort of very slowly. Like initially, there is a product that is high on priority. You get hired. It's but without you knowing, sometimes priorities change very slowly and gradually within a company. And you might start to see that your manager or your direct manager, starts to not take your meetings or blows off one-on-ones, not seem to be interested in things you are escalating. And that's sort of indications that you are misaligned from the core things that your management is trying to drive. And as product manager, it is your responsibility to be aware of that something like that has happened, and therefore be able to address it and talk openly about it with your management. So one case that happened to me is my direct, my manager and his manager, both of them seemed misaligned, but my VP and GM was very interested in the product. So I was very confused as to whether it was a priority project or not. And as I discovered later, my GM was wanting to drive this pet project, but his directs were not, bought into what he was trying to do. So those are situations that you need to be aware of as a product manager to be successful in driving your product. The other thing that will happen is broken process. So process is generally not part of a product manager's responsibility. There is program management, there is engineering management. So, but as CEO, you are sort of the guardian of whether things are running smoothly. Process is something that is, breaks all the time. So it's never as neatly organized as this image makes you believe. And most organizations have a lot of best practices and good stuff that allows you to, that keeps that process flowing through. But it's from every time the process keeps breaking for a number of reasons. One, people come and go. So if there is an influential individual, they might switch teams, they might quit the company. The team size changes, what you're doing changes. Sometimes you have a remote team, sometimes you have a contractor. So because there are so many people go on vacations, people go on maternity leave, paternity leave, and because of all that, you have to constantly adjust the process to suit the need and the pace at which it's going. So you've probably heard of this triangle where there is, you can get two of these three. One is speed, quality, and predictability. So in some phases of the product, you need speed and predictability, and in others you need, speed and quality. And because of those changing requirements, you need to constantly tweak the process. And so you need to have a good grip of, all the agile and, methodologies, the sprint planning, and if you have that, that's a very, very strong thing already for yourself. The final thing I would say in terms of, driving, like as a CEO driving a project, is the matrix. Any company, whether small or large, you can't really do much with just one team. You will be interfacing with multiple different teams. The larger the company, the more involved the team structure becomes, and you have to be very, very aware of driving something as product managers where you have 5 or 10 different teams in some cases, where you're interfacing and influencing and convincing everybody to be on your project, to deliver for you. So you're not only influencing up, you're also influencing your peers and relationships in both those. Many people focus on their team and their sort of silo especially when you begin, but it is equally important to have a very broad spectrum of influence with your peers. So that being said, those are some high-level challenges, and each situation is unique. So I'm happy to talk about it, and we'll talk about it as we end this up. So given all of these situations, how do you transition? So the number one thing for you to transition is to be prepared. By being prepared is do start doing very simple things. Don't be late to meetings. And most importantly, ask thoughtful questions. So there is I don't know how many know about the situation, but there is, the way that our brain functions, there is system one and system two. System one is for survival. As soon as you see something, you see my face, you make an opinion. It's instant, it's quick. It is what allows us to perceive danger and react to it. And system two in our brain is lazy, but it is more thoughtful. You have to engage it, to sort of understand what's really going on. So the reason I bring that up is in any meeting and otherwise, you might go into a meeting, make an impression, and say certain things, your ideas, your thoughts as they come to you. But more and more, you may feel like not everything that you say, immediately sticks. And there are, other smarter people around who might find, who might poke holes in your arguments. So in meetings and other places, you need to, one, go prepared, and secondly, engage system two to ask thoughtful questions. If you do that, then that starts to create this impression with people that you are, somebody who's, to be listened to, and you are engaged in the operation. And the second thing that you want to do is demonstrate leadership. So be the domain expert in whatever you're doing, whether it's customer success, sales enablement, QA, or software engineer, or product owner, of whatever. Be the person that is the go-to person for that particular thing. I have seen several people move into product management because they are good at what they do. They're good with customers. They're good with the product. They know it inside out. And they have because of their strength in that, they have demonstrated leadership where they have gotten things done. And getting things done can be as simple as organizing an event, or getting the essence of it and just running with it. The third thing, which I think most people trip on, is move into a fast-growing part of the business. So you might be really good with your domain. You might be always prepared. You might have a great understanding of that product and business. And you might even be promised in certain cases that you will be promoted or transferred into a product role, but that hasn't happened for like 3 months, 6 months, and it's been delayed. The reason that's maybe happening, even though you are a great candidate, great relationships with your boss, is because the business is not growing fast enough. If it's not growing fast enough, then there isn't an opportunity to introduce new products, which means there isn't a job for new product managers. And this is a tricky one because transfer within an organization is pretty hard. You have to first find a job somewhere else. You have to have the delicate balance of when you tell your existing boss and the new person, and do that matchmaking and get it working. But this is probably an easier pill to swallow than to take your experience without a product manager title and start applying outside of the company, and get in as a product manager somewhere else. The thing I say is, if you trained as a dermatologist and you want to be a brain surgeon, it is the only way you can achieve that is through relationships, but within a company, and not go directly apply somewhere else to another hospital as a brain surgeon. Your chances are pretty slim, and you will get pretty frustrated in getting that done. Number 4 is relationships. So you want to build these relationships within an organization with an influential PM, where they have the authority to hire and groom you into somebody. And relationships doesn't mean that I go to lunch with you, I generally am friendly. It means that I'm providing value to you. So when somebody is doing something, can you find a way to help them with a certain task, with a certain, with a certain thing, and ask them for projects that you could do that can help them. And it's not just being a follower of that person, just not being, it's not about being nice, but it's also it's to provide value in moving something that they are trying to move forward. So helping them move forward some initiative that they are trying to move forward. That's a working relationship where you become valuable to that individual. Finally, I would say presentation. Dress like you care in every aspect of being a product manager. So if you are in a situation where you don't agree with the company strategy, or you don't like the people, or you know don't get along with your boss and stuff, be very sure that they feel the same about you, that you're not somebody who fits in this organization, and therefore your chances of getting any traction within their organization is, you know, are pretty low. So you have to really believe and be the team player that you expect others to be. If you are in a situation like this, your best bet is to, you know, take your existing skills and move into another role, company, BU, so that you know where you have a much stronger fit. So to summarize, so far we've talked about, you know, the 5 steps, which is whatever you're doing, be prepared. You know, ask thoughtful questions. Because of that, get the domain experience, expertise, become the you know, demonstrate leadership, start, you know, getting small things done without thinking too far ahead. If you have done these things and you become the subject matter expert, and you're still not getting traction, transfer to another part of the business where you get more traction, where they're, you know, growing faster. And it's really hard to do that because you are so well set in your current role and location that it's very hard to you know, leave that and take that leap. But I would strongly recommend that. Build our relationships across the company, especially product folks who are influential positions who might be hiring. This may take some time. It might take 3 to 6 months, but it's worth investing. You know, these things are cyclical, and there are certain times when most companies hire and then they, you know, don't hire for some time. So you have to be cognizant that it'll take time. And finally, you know, be you know, care about the product, care about the company, care about the people that you work with. I don't know how many of you have here are on H-1B, but if you are on an H-1B, this is a really challenging situation, and it you know, because all this transfer and stuff is really, you're really not able to do that if you're on a work visa. So happy to talk to anybody who has such situations, and I'm sure we can figure out a way. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arjun, for the great presentation. I really like the presentation and the points that you have covered over here. I have few questions, but before that, I'd like to give opportunity to all of the participants who are there. If you have any question, please feel free to jump in. Let Arjun know your question. We'd be like happy to learn more about it. Okay, so I'll start.
Okay.
So Arjun, you talked about like getting your idea accepted by leadership, right? Uh, there are multiple ideas which are pitched by different product managers and in front of leadership, and then you have to really show that your idea is valuable to business. It's actually going to improve profit margin or maybe business or reach of product, right? But how do you make your idea stand out, or how do you make the functionality that you're suggesting to business stand out of all other functionalities that are suggested by the product managers? Is there any matrix that you use, or is there any say like key performance indicators that you use to come up and quantify your suggestions?
Sure. Great question. Thanks. I think the key here is that your ideas, whatever you're backing or, you know, you're predicting, has to be based on data. So before you even come up with an idea, it shouldn't be just something that you believe in, without it being something that the users of that product also believe in, and something that you know, they have expressed as a pain point. So you have to have a bunch of data that you have looked at and thoroughly, like in the last 3 months, almost to a year, so to make sure that it is a pattern that's repeated every year, and there are some ups and downs and the engagement and retention or whatever it is that it's a sustained issue that has happened. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is to talk to really look at customer forums and pre-release or other places where you have these customer stories coming out, anecdotes. So essentially you want to and then finally you want to actually talk to the people, your customers, to validate much of the data and the hypothesis that you have looked through, to make it a compelling story. Now, to make your point to an influencer, you want to make a good story, and that story is supposed to be you got to make a compelling story, and then story has to be personal. It is about you going somewhere, trying to do something. You met this customer, they had a big issue, and that issue could have been resolved because some feature we don't have. And this feature is, and you know what, this is not an isolated event. I have talked to 3 other people, and I spoke to, my peer did the same thing last year, and we had the same issue. And look, by the way, there is all this data that also proves that this is a much bigger problem. And then you get into the revenue and the TAM and the impact and stuff like that. So those would be 2 ways: is don't take your own women fancy to say, well, we should build this, grounded in data, and then have a very personal story where you've actually talked and reached out to a customer, and make this a compelling story, which is one-to-one, which is personal.
Awesome. So one more follow-up question on this. I've seen like for the new graduates, like who join companies as associate product managers, right? What are the potential ways that they can join a company as, like, they can like make their mark in team and like show or demonstrate leadership skills?
So I think if you start as an associate product manager, it's you need to remain very focused on execution. You want to be focused on whatever project, whatever you've been given, as something that you do a really good job at. And so if you keep your eyes and ears to the ground. So a long time ago, when I first started off, I was at Yahoo. It was my first sort of job, and I got a pretty meaty project of dealing with Flickr and launching something for them. So the first 6 months was all about making sure I knew every detail of that product and the launch and the people, and identify things that will allow me to be successful. You need a few wins right up front. So you want to remain very focused. You want to make sure that you've moved the needle, and you're not stalled, because many times you can get into a product or be given a product where it's in a stall mode, like it doesn't go into production. You worked on it, you've done everything, but the engineering resources get pulled or something else like that happens. So you want to be very, very particular about making sure that you are doing your best to get those early wins.
Cool. Yes, I would completely agree with you here. And one more piece of advice from my experience: try to spend as much time as possible at the beginning of the project and just understanding the details. Because if you spend a real time in first 7 days, if you are thorough with the product, your rest of the journey would be like very easy, and you'd be like able to come up with more and more suggestions. But if you're not 100% sure with what you're building right at the beginning, and then you'll struggle throughout it, right? You won't be able to like pitch in your ideas and come up with it. Your leadership, you won't be able to like demonstrate your leadership skills. So definitely awesome. And also, Arjun, you talked about like building relationships. So I connect relationships with networking as well. So what are few best ways to build relationship or to do networking with the senior product managers or good product managers in the industry? As you mentioned, you don't you don't just go out on a lunch. with people, that's not relationship building or networking. What could be the other potential ways of networking? Because I think networking, when nothing is working, do networking.
Yeah.
So I really,
It's a very simple philosophy that I have, which is, you give before you take. So if you want a job in a particular team, you don't go ask that person, I want a job, because that person is, generally going to be put off by that. They probably get a lot of people asking them the same question. So the way to do that is to, give your time, your effort, your connections, not ideas, because, ideas are cheap. But is there something I can do for you? So you want to understand, first you have to be, very focused on what you want, which team you want, why you want that. In your first conversation or the first few conversations, unless you know that person, don't have to be what you can get from it. Like I can become a senior PM or something else, but it has to be, what is something that interests you about that product? How can you contribute to help the other person out? And if you start with that approach, then you're much likely to get in the good books of the hiring manager than not. And that's sort of a secret to any networking, is to actively listen to the other person, even if you're at a meetup or anywhere else, and try and solve their problem before you present your problem.
awesome. Perfect. Perfect. I completely agree with you. Awesome, guys. So is there any question from anyone? I can see Vijay on the line, Ashit, Adarsh, Azra. Hey, guys.
Yeah, as we're speaking, I have a couple of questions actually.
Yep.
So I've actually recently transitioned into a PM role. Historically, my career has been in finance, like corporate finance, commercial finance. And the part I'm finding really difficult and struggling with is that I don't come from a technical background. And so that learning curve is very steep. And then also, it's more the data. It's not simple data. Oh, how many customers are complaining with this kind of call? And do they have this? Is this a pervasive problem with them? This is sort of like, it's the checkout process. So how many customers are abandoning due to very obscure reasons? And I'm finding it hard to upskill with the data side of things. How would you suggest that I go about tackling that over the coming few weeks? Because that is stalling me from getting out value, I suppose.
Got it. So can you share with us the company that you're at?
Sure. It's a remittance business called World Remit.
Okay.
It's based in London. We've got offices around the world. So it's kind of like just a purely digital version of the likes of Western Union and MoneyGram.
Okay. And you're responsible for growth?
Well, yeah. So it's a mixture between, so it's the checkout process is my product.
Okay.
But because it's very global, we've got multiple methods. So it's kind of a fine balance between integrating all these different types of payment methods. It's not just credit or debit card, which is fine. But then it's also trying to improve that UX and get to, the coveted one-click type of approach. But
right.
It's difficult to prioritize when you don't have the data to your hands or the technical side of things at your fingertips.
So I would say don't get overwhelmed by the technical side of things. There is a problem space and a solution space.
Yep.
So most engineers, most companies remain in the solution space, and there is a lot of momentum to keep doing. People already know. Engineers generally always have an idea on what is the next thing that they can be optimizing. It's a new payment method, or new integration, or somewhere like that. As a product manager, what you want to, where you want to remain in, given your background, is in the problem space. What is the problem that is causing us to have these checkout problems? Who are those people who are more likely to be affected by a certain checkout method, or they're failing a certain checkout method? So unless there is already data that is available, you want to understand the segments of users that are having these problems. Why are they having these problems? Talk to customer success, customer support, look at your forums, talk to other product managers who've been, to understand, to get a very good grip on why certain things should be prioritized because they're affecting a very strategic customer base for your company. Does that help, or is that something that you've already done?
Yeah, it's something I'm aware of. It's more in the actual data itself and actually proving it. You know, you can, like you said, you need to ground your ideas in the data, and it's there that I get stuck, not because I don't know what I want to achieve out of it. It's just because I can't produce it because I don't have the skills set to use likes of SQL in an adequate enough fashion to.
Do you have a business analyst or a data analyst that you can work with?
Yeah, we've got a few, but it tends to be spread quite thin between everybody in the company. So I feel like if you're a product owner here, it's like sort of good to have a grip on.
So it is that those skills. So prioritize some of your skills. If it's SQL, if it's Hive or Tableau or whatever tools you're using, there are many online. I would recommend Product School runs a course on data sort of tools and stuff. And I'm sure where you are, there might be other resources online that you can take that will get you, enable you to dig into the data yourself. It's definitely, SQL is not rocket science. It can be picked up pretty easily. Especially the basic commands you can. So you would probably have to spend some time going through, say, SQL or Hive. I'm not sure which particular one you're using, and be able to pull out the data that you need. I think 3-4 weeks you should be pretty up there to get the basics done.
Yeah.
You can connect with me offline, and I might be able to point you to some specific resources that are that might get you started quicker.
Yeah, that would be great, because I think that's been the biggest blocker. It's been a bumpy road of really trying to like I said, it's been a really steep learning curve, and so now I'm trying to figure out actually adding value, and I always find myself stalled by either a lack of knowledge data wise, lack of knowledge technical wise. I don't know if I should just ignore that and just get on with it, or spend the next
data is a technical, I would it's not something that you want to get into immediately or too much, but data is definitely something that you want to be in a position to do yourself. How big is your company in terms of number of people?
It's about 300 odd people. A big majority of them are customer services.
So that size company generally, like you said, has very few resources, especially data analytics. A lot of them is sales or engineering. And then, data becomes something that is not a must-have, and the onus is on product managers to, own that piece. And it can be, it is a lot of work, for sure.
Okay, well, that's useful to know. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ezra, for your question. Okay, any other question? If you want, you can also put your question in chat and I can voice it out for you. Okay, so Arjun, I have one more question. There is a lot of confusion between what is product management and what is project management. I know like project management is a part of product management, but it would be great if you can clarify the difference between two. I've seen candidates getting confused between the two, and they mix up things. And when a recruiter sees that this guy is more inclined toward project management, he's talk more about like planning a project, Microsoft project, right? Talking more about testing items. So that proves as a kind of like negative point for candidate in that interview. So it would be great to know about difference between product and project management.
Yeah, I have a post on this on Quora. So at a high level, product managers are optimistic and program managers are paranoid. Also called program managers in some cases. What I mean by that is product managers own driving a vision. So they are, always optimistic and wanting to get a lot done in much quicker time frame, because they are looking at it from a high level, saying we are building this new checkout experience or this integration, and that'll happen in 6 weeks, and they'll be good to go. You'll have, their focus is on impact to the business, to the users. Program managers or project managers, on the other hand, are the holders of, the timeline. They look into what are all the dependencies, who all need to come together to get this done. And once you get into the nitty-gritties, they become more paranoid, because what the product manager has promised and wants to do, or he or she wants to do, is probably not possible in the time that there is. So the most, many of them are PMP is a certificate that many of them do, or they are agile coaches in some cases, but or they've been in companies where they are very much about the process and predictability. Their job is to make sure that there are the roadmaps that have been produced by product managers are very predictable, so that other people and other teams can interface, and there is a very predictable outcome that the company can produce. Which is, they don't really care about whether you're working on identity or checkout or personalization or cloud or whatever it is. The process is very similar. Most companies have something called the PMO office, the program manager office, where they come together every once in a while and they make robust the product and keep changing it, which is very different from product management, where you are coming up with new ideas, you're looking at data, you're validating with customers, you are all in the problem space. You're trying to identify what are a prioritized list of problems that we as a company, as a team, should be solving, so that our customers are better off.
Perfect. Okay. We have a question from Adarsh. So Adarsh is pursuing Masters in Engineering Management from Duke University. He has no background with product management, but he's really passionate about it. And he would like to search for an internship. So he wants to know how he can get into a product management internship without having any prior experience. Is that even possible?
It's pretty hard to do that because, it's sort of like product managers are hired for two reasons. One, they have a specific, so there are two ways. I would initially say that it's pretty hard if you were to just, apply with an engineering resume with a master's in, I don't know, which subject, and you apply, it probably won't make the cut. But the way that you can do that transition is a couple of ways. One, if you work on a side project of your own. So, take something that you're passionate about, like not at work, but like in life. Are you a traveler? Are you, maybe you play music, or you love animals, or you love dogs, or whatever is your thing to do in life. And if you connect that, personal passion and story and things that you've used, some products, and you've had a particular problem with it, maybe you're into music, and you create, spend a few months creating something where you've talked to a lot of people, and remain all in the problem space. Don't get into sort of making an app and building like a solution, but be the owner of that problem and be able to articulate, what that problem is to that segment of users. And once you become, the evangelist for that particular problem, find a company which is trying to solve the same issue. One of the good things about today's times is that no matter where you look, there are lots and lots of companies trying to disrupt almost anything that there is to do in the world. Software is literally eating up the world. So you find that company and then pitch it to them. Connect with a product manager through LinkedIn or otherwise, and talk to them that this is something that you've been working on, you're really passionate about, and something that you are, willing to work, for free, basically, because it's building on your idea. So that's the way that I would do. I wouldn't, read a bunch of books, because you really have to convince somebody that so let me back up and say the reason why somebody will get convinced is because they have to feel that you made a bunch of mistakes, that if they hire you, you will prevent their company from making those mistakes. You've explored certain things, certain avenues, and found out, and you put sweat equity in there to find out, well, this thing doesn't work. It could be very simple as, online marketing or something. And you said, well, when you send cold emails, it doesn't work like this. The way it works for these people is you have to say these things. You have to have emails in gaps of every 2 days. And I have done many of these things. That's why I'm telling you that. So when you make a speech like that, and I have a job to set up some online campaign or something, I'm like, okay, I'll hire this guy. He seems to know, or she seems to know exactly what needs to be done. Because if you see it from a product manager's perspective or a small startup perspective, they have a certain budget and they are trying to optimize the spending of that budget or that money in a way that is, gives them most bang for the buck. So they're looking for product managers who can deploy their money in the most efficient manner. And if you come from that perspective, saying, I've made these mistakes, I've learned from them, and I can help you, then you're in a good spot to get in as a product manager.
Awesome. I think that's a really, really innovative approach to get into product management if you don't have any background there. Awesome. We have one more question for you, Arjun, here. So our participant would like to know, what are the different steps involved in a product management interview, both for an experienced and for a fresh graduate? Or is that interview different? How many rounds of interviews are there, and what can they expect out of it?
So initially, you might have a phone screen with the recruiter, and the recruiter interview is probably 15 minutes, maximum a half an hour. And they are basically trying to judge whether your resume matches up with what you're saying. Basically a standard verification of your resume versus what you have to say about it. Key questions that you must prepare for are why that company is important, why you're applying. Have an elevator pitch, which is different from just a description of what's in your resume, because the interviewer already has your resume. So you have to talk, you have to give them a flavor of who you are as a person. What are you passionate about? And there is a book that Gail Lackman has written about, which is an extremely well-written book, which is Cracking the PM Interview, which you must read if you haven't already. So she was a Google recruiter for product managers. Definitely a must-read book. So you start with a 15 to 30-minute interview the recruiter. Then it'll go to at least 1 or 2 rounds with a PM on the team who would have a half an hour call with you. Go through many of the questions, ask you about you, ask you about why this company, why now, etc. If you make those through, then you have an on-site. An on-site interview would take about 5 hours, 5.5 hours. You'll go through about 4 or 5 different people. So typically you will talk to the development lead, engineering director, whoever is the engineering lead. You will talk to either an engineering team member or a data analyst. And you would talk to obviously the other PMs on that team and your hiring manager. And depend if this is a PM, so about 4 or 5. And in many cases, especially in the Bay Area, you are also required to do a peer presentation. So a week before your interview, on-site interview, they'll give you a topic or a couple of topics. One topic is generally how would you improve a feature in this company for this product. Another would be like, define the strategy of something. And I have a couple of samples that I can share if you guys are interested. And you have to prepare like a 5-10 slide deck to explain what is a feature that you think might be useful for that company. And the real catch here is not the feature, but your approach. You have to, talk about how you approach a problem. You do a situation analysis, then you look at the alternatives, then you come up with some hypotheses, then you will test those hypotheses, validate that, define some success metrics, and launch the product. So if you go directly into a solution mode, like, okay, this is how I'm going to solve it, you are basically not going to get that job. And the other one thing that they will definitely ask you is an estimation question, which was in fashion in Google for a long time, like how many golf balls in an airplane, how many gas stations in the US, things like that. Again, it's not important what the answer is, it's important how you approach it. And the way you approach it is pretty straightforward. You first make a bunch of assumptions. You say, I'm talking about gas stations that are only for, regular use, not by airlines and not by freight trucks. And, it's non-diesel, it's only gas. I'm only talking about non-freight stuff. And then in most of these, there are a couple of numbers. It all starts with, you can always say, if it's in the US, the population of the US is 300 million people, 100 million households, and then break it down from there. Every household has 2 cars, and they fill up the gas once a week, and then you can build up your, answer from there. But basically it tells them that you're logically going through, you're clarifying, you're making a bunch of assumptions, and then you're going step by step to come up with a number. The number is really not that important. Hope that helps.
Perfect. That's
and then after the interview, you might, you'll be asked for reference checks, generally 2 to 3 reference checks. Mostly 2. They might, depending on the strength of the interview, they may or may not go to all 3. And then you get an offer.
Awesome, really helpful. So we are reaching at the top of the hour. So we have time for one more question. Arjun, we have like a couple of questions here. I would like to take one from this. So as a product manager, what's the first step that you would take while launching a new product in a tough market? I've heard this question in so many interviews from so many candidates. So it would be great if you can answer this question.
So in all markets are tough, and you want to go. There is no substitute for testing your way through it. So you want to set up an A/B test. You want to take a small sample size. So at Yahoo, what you used to do is to take like 0.2% of the traffic on the Yahoo front page, and we would launch something to that small population. Facebook is constantly deploying new things all the time. Every week, every day, they're launching something or the other. So if you are in a, you don't want to go big bang, especially if it's a tough market. You want to go slow, and you want to have, some criteria on, what does success look like in 1 week, in 2 weeks? Is it the number of people who are clicking? If it's like a checkout thing, how many people, and you've changed something about it, you added a new payment method, how many people are utilizing that, why are they dropping off? And having that instrumentation. So the first step is instrument, whatever it is. By instrument, I mean that you are getting the data feed so that you can actually, it goes into some sort of reporting tool that you can actually see and measure what's actually happening. And once you have that, then you want to, test your way through it. That's how you would launch it.
Awesome.
The other thing to launch it, if it's say certain things where you can launch it for your own company, what is called dogfooding, and that's a really smart thing to do. A lot of companies use dogfooding a lot. Like Google, they will launch it for their own employees, get an understanding of what 10-20,000 people think about it before they launch it to the outside world.
Yep, that's a smart technique. Awesome. And Arjun, you also in your previous answer, you also mentioned that you have a couple of examples of how to prepare a deck that basically shows your approach. If you can like share 1 or 2 examples with our participants, that would be really helpful for them. I guess for all the college graduates and those who want to transition to PM, it would be a great resource for them. Any of your thoughts there? So
I can forward it to you, and you can then send it out.
I'll distribute it to the group. So to respect everyone's time, we are at the 10:59 right now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Arjun, for wonderful, wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure this is very, very helpful for everyone who's joined. Thanks, everyone, for joining. You can join our Facebook channel, our YouTube channel. We would be happy to know what topics you're interested in, and we would be happy to get more experts like Arjun, and would be happy to invite Arjun again. If you would like to get in touch with Arjun personally to get more advice, anything regarding product management, interviews, transition to product management, about senior roles in the product management, opportunities maybe in Bay Area or throughout US, you can always connect with Arjun on High Counselor app. The High Counselor app is available on App Store. Arjun's profile is available there. You can easily reach out to him. He'll be more than happy to help you. Arjun, any final message from you would be really helpful.
No, thanks a lot to be at that late hour, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arjun. Connect with you later. Thanks everyone for joining. We have your email ID and your contact addresses. We'll be sending you all the details. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.